Good Sunday morning and welcome to WGN-TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. Well, we're now less than a month away from the midterm elections. Republicans have an outside shot of flipping the House, and one Illinois race party leadership is focusing on takes place in the west and southwest suburbs. Incumbent Democrat Bill Foster looking to hold his seat in the newly redrawn 11th Congressional District that includes parts of Aurora, Naperville to the south, stretches up to McHenry as far northwest as Belvedere. Foster is seeking his 8th full term on Capitol Hill, and he's going to face newcomer Catalina Loff, who ran for the GOP seat in the 14th district 2 years ago before failing in the primary to Jim Oberweis. Incoming Congressman and Democrat Bill Foster joins me this morning to talk about his bid for another term. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Yep, good morning.
Always like to start off with a little bit of history, because before the scientist that we know you to be, when you were 19 years old, you and brother Fred actually started a pretty successful business.
Yeah, we got $500 from my parents and started in our basement. And after a little while, we got kicked out of the basement for making too big a mess, and we moved up to my bedroom. And when we got our first order, we moved to a tiny little metal shed in a cornfield. And now the company, which makes microprocessor-controlled theater lighting equipment, manufactures about 70% of all of the theater lighting equipment in the United States.
And Broadway, too.
What? Yeah, most of the lights on Broadway are equipped.
All right, but I do have to just tip the hat to the fact you are the only PhD physicist in Congress, by the way. You used to work at Fermilab on the accelerator construction and research projects. Just a sentence about that.
Well, I'm very proud that actually earlier this year I got a Lifetime Achievement Award for my work at Fermilab from the American Physical Society. But you know, what we did was smashing protons and antiprotons together to make particles that had not been around since the Big Bang. And so I was actually on the team that discovered the top quark, the heaviest known form of matter, and really one of the greatest discoveries that certainly Fermilab has ever made. It's something we're not proud enough of in Illinois, that out on the prairies of Illinois, we built giant accelerators that made discoveries that will be in the science textbooks forever.
And I congratulate you on that. I got a C in physics. So let's talk about the economy. Did the administration take COVID financial assistance further than was good for our economy, maybe leading some folks to get so much help they just don't want to go back to work?
Yeah, well, I don't think that was the dominant effect. The big emergency economically that we had to do was deal with the unemployment crisis and deal with the supply chain crises. And so that we've seen a very strong and I think competent response. There's always a trade-off between unemployment and inflation. And I think 10 years ago with the financial crisis back then, we made the mistake of not intervening strongly enough. And it took almost 10 years for the labor market to get back to normal.
One of the later things the House did was pass the Inflation Reduction Act. That puts a tax on the nation's largest companies of 15%. What do you say to Republicans who say any kind of tax increase on anybody is a move against businesses coming to Illinois or anywhere and growing?
Well, I tell you, when I was starting my company back when I was 19, we knew that if our company ever became big and successful, that we would be paying very high marginal tax rates. In our country, we used to have a tax bracket that only applied to a single person, Rockefeller. And the high tax rates on very rich people that were in force back when we were starting our company did not keep us from staying up all night shipping our first products. And that's the deal that I had. And in return for that, I was able to go to college at the University of Wisconsin for $2,500 a year. All right, and that was the deal back then, that if you ever became successful, you were expected to do a lot to assist those who are trying to get on the next rungs of the economic ladder. That was the deal that I know I personally benefited from, and the deal that we should extend to the next generations of kids so they don't end up with just staggering amounts of student debt, for example.
So does it impact the business development and growth? Well, it's just something they have to live with?
Well, as a businessman, I understand that the real job creators in this economy are customers. And customers, there are not many of them that are super rich. Customers come from the middle class. And the policies that I support are ones that strengthen the middle class in the United States, because ultimately that is what business relies on for its real strength.
Let me talk about the climate. You were the lead sponsor of the Better Energy Storage and Technology Act of 2019, other efforts like the 100% Clean Economy Act, which called for a net zero carbon economy by 2050. But how do you convince those folks who believe that climate emergencies are a hoax, and yes, things change, but you know, humans have nothing to do with it. Changes are no big deal. We are hundreds or we're thousands of years away from any real damage.
Well, I guess you can talk to my opponent to get an explanation of that point of view. But as a scientist, I understand that climate change is real, and it's largely caused by human emission of greenhouse gases. And so we have a duty to the world to fix this, and we also have a duty to do this at the lowest possible cost to our economy. And so the highest leverage federal activity that really exists is to engage in research on cost-lowering technologies. Do things like develop next-generation batteries, as is being done at Argonne National Lab, which will allow cars to have several times higher range and lower cost of production of the battery systems in them, which are really the tough part of electric cars. We have to have another hard look at nuclear. Illinois has benefited tremendously from having the preponderance of its electricity come from a carbon-free source. In fact, if you run the numbers, every nuclear plant in Illinois has saved about 1,000 lives because of all of the dangers of living downwind of coal plants or the dangers of mining coal.
And by the way, lots of rebates, buy an electric car and all that, government's going to help you, but what do you say to people who go, I can't afford that, even the cars are still expensive?
That's right. Well, that's why you work hard on cost-lowering technologies. We're in a situation right now that if you want to buy a Ford F-150 in Illinois, the cheapest thing to do is to buy the electric version, not the gasoline-powered version. There's been tremendous progress there. And it has to do with two things. First, the fundamental federal research into battery technology to understand the chemistry, and then federal seed money. That, for example, the federal government about 10 years ago put about $500 million in startup funding into the startup, which had the idea that there had been enough progress in battery technology that you could write down a good design for an electric car. And so we helped the startup called Tesla, you may have heard of.
Yeah.
And the last time I looked, the market capitalization of Tesla was about $500 billion.
Let me talk about crime and guns with you if I can. You do support a ban on assault weapons, universal background checks, but today Republicans are all about the Second Amendment, freedom to carry their weapons, protect themselves, and of course the Supreme Court is on the path of moving in that direction. So what do you say to folks who say that what the Democrats are trying to do is maybe not even constitutional according to the Supreme Court, and it's a challenge to our freedoms?
Yeah, well, it's a sad reality today that even though the Democrats have bare control of the Senate and the House, President Trump still has control of the Supreme Court. And they have been moving in ways that get farther and farther from what the real beliefs and hopes of the American people are. So you've seen what they've done on Roe versus Wade and women's right to an abortion. You've seen them repeal gun laws, anti-gun violence laws that have been on the books for 105 years in New York, and they've repealed them because of who appointed that particular set of justices to the Supreme Court. And so this is something that that we really have to understand, and the standard we have to set should be the same standard set by the Founding Fathers on this, that they, at the time of the Revolution and the Second Amendment, they understood that it was okay for ordinary citizens to have flintlocks and muskets, but it was not okay to have, for example, a Civil War cannon. That was viewed as too lethal to be in ordinary hands, because after all, a single person can kill, while a three-person team with a Civil War cannon can kill maybe 10 people.
Very different times. Let me talk about abortion for a moment. Republicans say Democrats want to allow abortions all the way through the 9-month and beyond. What is your view on that, and how do you see it?
Well, I view that this should be a private decision between a woman and her doctor. And this is the idea that the decision be made instead by a bunch of, frankly, male-dominated state legislatures is no more acceptable than if these male-dominated state legislatures would reverse, what is it, Loving versus Virginia, the Supreme Court.
The interracial marriage.
Interracial marriage, and this is.
But would you accept a limitation of some sort?
As long as the doctor and the woman had an ultimate say, depending on the medical situation.
All right, before our time is up, I want to touch immigration with you for a moment. A federal court recently throwing another blow at DACA, saying it's unconstitutional. Is there a fix to that issue of immigration and the migrants coming over?
Well, look, it's a tragedy of recent history that we were not allowed to vote on the comprehensive immigration reform that passed the Senate back in 2013 and then was blocked by Speaker Boehner for more than a year. Had we been allowed to vote, I was one of those those group of Democrats, including Luis Gutierrez and others, who got private commitments from, dozens of Republicans that if we could find a way to bring it up for a vote, they would have voted for it. And had we been allowed to vote for it, we could have, it would have passed by 30 votes. And so this is something, it's a deal that's still to be had, that yes, we have to do something about the 10 or so million currently undocumented who have been, living clean and responsible and productive lives here. And so we will do something for them one time, but in return, we will get back to a system of laws, and this is the deal that was in the 2013 bill, and that deal should be available today, and I believe it would be even in the Republican Party.
All right, Congressman Bill Foster, so much time. We tried to cover as much as we could, but thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. We're going to take our first break. Coming up next on WGN-TV Political Report, Republican challenger Catalina Loft joins the show. That's his opponent. Hear her responses to Congressman Foster's platform and the key issues she's focusing on. That's up next.